Welcome. I'm Michael Stoddart and I'm here with Dr. Fiona Kerr, who is the Industry Professor for Neural and Systems Complexity at Adelaide University. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Kerr, you've studied human-machine interaction. Can you expand on what you believe we want out of automation and your view on what we should want out of automation when it comes to the future of our work?
Okay. So one of the things that's really interesting is looking at the neuroscience point of view, which is how do we shape each other when we interact. So humans have this incredible neurophysiological impact on each other. We cascade all sorts of chemicals, and it actually changes how we think about things, how we make complex decisions, how we adjust our thinking, how we bond towards an idea. So trust, lots of that comes in there. Then there is how we interact with technology. And there are some ways in which technology is really useful to us. It's aggregative capacity, all sorts of things it brings us in terms of speed and capability in that way. So I also look at how we interact with why and do we look at technology and how do we use it. And then there's the interesting thing of interacting with another human through technology, so intermediated by technology. So what does a screen do to our capacity to connect, to do various things? And because our brains work differently, if I look at you on a screen and if I look at you directly face to face with eye lock and all those sorts of things, it becomes really interesting around when do you use what and what changes does it make?
So that interaction, that interlock through technology, is it always good or is it always bad, or is it somewhere in between? Can you fall one side or the other?
It's a really good question, and it's something that needs an awful lot more investigation. So some of the discussions that I have around different countries with people who are experts in areas like what changes when I look at you over a screen, or which parts of how we resonate can happen over a screen once we get really good data strength and once we get retinas aligned and those sorts of things, and which parts of human connection will never be able to occur over any sort of technological medium.
Sorry to interrupt, do you get a sense of which parts of human connection you think will never be able to be over technology?
Some of the things that we do as humans that are really fascinating are around how we physically synchronize neurally. So we do have interpersonal neural synchronization that happens through direct gaze, and it actually engages parts of our brains physically with each other when we're in the space. We resonate, we have dynamic resonance in our bodies in all sorts of ways, even things like voice theta waves. There's a number of things that occur. And what it does is it creates all sorts of preemptive thinking, of getting to know the other person, of being able to read them, of engaging social networks in our brains, and therefore the trust and the compassion and the interest in a thing we both might be discussing. And one of the things that ends up doing is changing the way that we can deal with complex issues, because it changes the thought patterns that we have, and also changing our capacity for abstractive thinking, which is around creativity and building novel ideas. So what that means is, when do we have to get people together in one place to discuss those things? And when is it quite fine to use technology? And does it change once I know you as well? Because that's a really interesting area.
So in a summary, do you think that there is some things that will never be able to be transmitted over technology?
Personally, I do. I think there are things. And there are things we don't even know. Like, is it endorphins? Is it, and all sorts of things that are chemicals we're not even realizing that we resonate in or around when we directly interact.
I want to move on to something other that you've mentioned, which is a quantity versus quality nexus when it comes to applying machines to our work. And when I say machines, I'm thinking of technology machines like AI and machine learning and something like that. Could you explain what you mean by this quantity versus quality, and your views on how that impacts our future of work? Okay.
So a really good example of a quality partnership with AI is a surgeon. So if it's a surgeon standing there with an AI clip on their glasses, – and they're in the middle of an operation and something occurs, what they can do, because the AI is also looking at what they're doing, is say, okay, in this situation, give me the 4 best options. And because of the huge aggregative power of AI, within seconds, literally, it's gone through every relevant paper, come back and gives you options. However, it's the experienced surgeon that actually makes the decision in the end. Now that's a beautiful quality partnership. The quantity partnership is where some organizations go in terms of, I'm going to use, say, AI as much as possible. So if 85% of this job can be done by AI, but 15% needs human input, I'm going to package that up. And I'm going to then mean that we have this battery hen sort of group of people who just do that 15% for a very low wage anywhere in the world. And it doesn't matter if they don't feel fulfilled or they don't actually interact, and we've got this, we're almost right back to the battery hen. That's the easiest way that I'm going to go, because I'm going to get maximum quantity out of that. So those are the 2 kind of ways you can take AI, because AI does both superbly. It's up to us how we use it.
So are you optimistic that we will go for more qualitative, or you fear that it will just be a quantitative application?
There's already both, and there are definitely both options. And it becomes a very complex question, because what are the drivers for quantity versus quality? And one of the problems we have is the drivers around quantity, which is often around profit at that specific level, are very much organisationally based. The drivers around quality, which is how do you get meaningful work, how do you do that beautiful dance between technology and maximising people's capacity, are much more philosophical, and they're almost at a societal or a global level. So we have this real misalignment between the drivers of the 2. So how do you balance that? And because the quantity argument is short term but very, very enticing for that kind of organisation, or even that kind of country, if that's what's the driver in that in that country, then we don't have the discussions around what does that mean in 15 to 20 years? Because if you hitch your wagon to this quick quantity kind of answer, you're actually not going to be pulled up by the capacity of AI to go into that quality realm. And you've got to get them thinking that way instead of just wanting to go for that, what they see as an easy answer, which is actually quite short term.
Yeah. Let me finish then with a great term that you used, which was the distraction economy. I found that very interesting. Can you expand on what you mean by that? And how does this distraction economy affect the current work, but more importantly, if it continues, the future of work?
Okay. Well, I look at the neuroscience of interacting with technology, and that includes the well-known dopamine spike of a message and those sorts of things, and how we go for the glittery things on the edge of screens and that kind of thing. But at a deeper level, there's a beautiful body of work around, it's not necessarily just the security issues that are really big issues, it's also the distraction issues. So because we get so ingrained and habituated towards naturally at any time, if we have a little bit of time, going to something like a phone or that sort of thing, because it's just a way that we can spend those few seconds. The problem with that is it gets us down into very sort of superficial thinking. And it gets us away from what's called abstraction mode, which is that daydreaming mode where you start to think about your own self-awareness, but also the bigger picture, the bigger ideas in the world, the problems, the questions about why are we doing this? Why do we need technology? What are we shaping here? And if you've got almost this kind of distracted economy that's just going to these little things all the time, you get less and less of the capability to be looking up and thinking, well, what are we actually using this for? Why are we here to do this? And so I have a real worry that because we get seduced, I think Huxley said, what we desire controls us. And I laugh looking at 100 people waiting for a train, all looking at their phone, thinking, you would think it was our power base or something. But it's the way that we tend to go so much now because of all of the normal addictive kind of processes. And I really worry about the way that we've shaped how we look for information, how we get our news, how we classify all sorts of ways of being able to think about work and what worth is and what productivity is and what gain is. And we don't end up pulling back and stopping being distracted by this and actually trying to look at that, where's the world that we want to be? What do we want this to look like? How do we want technology to enable us to make a world that we want to live in?
Dr. Kerr, some fascinatingly deep and big ideas that you brought up. I wish we had more time, but thank you very much for your time.
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Kerr.
Thank you.